who can't change. Secondly, they agree with incel culture. What proposition is doing is allowing people to run away from their problems instead of finding real-life solutions. And thirdly, on the fact that people cannot change. Government gives them an outlet to do so. You rejected. For example, when you give pedophiles human models of kids, they are more likely to project these negative thoughts on real life people, and this is how it harms people in the real life. And now moving on to the clashes. What this debate really comes down to today is which side results in happier romantic relationships. We tell you that the majority of people that turn to AI romantic relationships are outcasts that struggle to find romantic relationships in the real world. They are most likely people that have toxic ideals, toxic behaviors, and toxic fantasies, and basically no one wants them in real life, so AI is their last resort, right? 3 layers of analysis on how this is so bad for side government. You're enabling the toxic behavior of these individuals, and you're allowing it to get worse. So AI companies, right, because they want their products to sell and they know who their main demographic is, they are likely to program the AI to be more obedient, more submissive, and more aggressive. And because AI don't have any feelings, you can program them and do anything you want with them with no physical retribution. So when a toxic person abuses an AI, they don't say anything about it, and they're going to think that, so the toxic person is going to think that it's okay and continue to do it. So you're allowing their toxic behaviors to worsen. In the comparative, on our side, when in-person relationships, if I'm getting abused, right, I'm going to say something about it and I'm going to do something about it. So at the very least, the perpetrator can recognize that they're doing something that's negative and morally abhorrent. So on this metric, we break off the issue at the root cause instead of side government who are actually enabling it. When government allows these people to become worse and worse, and there's no retribution, we tell you that it harms other members in society as well. Bringing this to my second layer of analysis, we tell you that the people who take part in AI relationships cannot reintegrate back into society. When this toxic individual sits in their room, talks to their significant other on the computer all day, projecting their extremely dangerous behavior on the AI with no physical retributions, the moment that they step into the real world, interact with other human friends, they are likely to project the same behaviors because they cannot make the switch in their minds anymore. They are unable to differentiate real life and AI, and their toxic behavior bleeds into their real relationships in their lives because it's difficult to make the switch when the behaviors are already reinforced. And thirdly, on fulfillment, we tell you that these people in AI relationships lack fulfillment. Because back to what they all said about cognitive dissonance, when there's always something in the back of your mind telling you that this isn't real, no matter how much fulfillment you can get in the short term, in the long term, you reach a breaking point and feel even more miserable than when they started from in the first place. So we win on all 3 of these metrics here, right? So now moving on to my word comparison. How our worst case scenario is still better than their best case scenario. So what side government's best case scenario might be is that somehow people find fulfillment in these relationships. And so what's the problem with this, right? Yes, they find fulfillment, but they never unlearn the toxic behavior that leads into their platonic relationships. This is bad because it harms other people who were never involved in these relationships in the first place. They can talk all they want about how there's no cheating, no chance that AI will abuse you in these relationships, which is why people turn to them in the first place, right? And they tell you that this is better because AI will be a more agreeable partner and so on and so forth. But we tell you that this is just lodging a bullet into their own case here because we tell you that it's actually a harm on their side. Why? The fact that AI doesn't care about your personality is specifically why it's so bad, because it enables your toxic behavior. And now our worst case scenario. So what's the worst thing that can happen outside here? Some outcasts do not find love. We tell you that there are 2 types of outcasts in this debate here. Now, one is the abusive people, and we don't want these people to be in romantic relationships in the first place because the harms are symmetrical on both sides. Secondly are the disabled people, who they say that are the stakeholders that we ignore today. We tell you that the disabled people can still cope. They can still find coping mechanisms in real life. They can find their friends, their family, and they can find fulfillment from achievements in their lives. What government tries to drill into you is that fulfillment only comes from romantic relationships, and we tell you that this isn't true. Proposition perpetuates real-life toxicity. Proposition does not realize that their side has no meaningful impact, and insofar as the only thing proposition does is defend AI relationships, and they cannot bring any benefits to the table, they concede that there is a problem with their side, and with that side is opposition.
The speaker spoke for 5 minutes and 54 seconds. Thank you, opposition whip. And And now I'd like to invite the opposition reply speaker to give her speech.
Can I return at this volume? Sorry. Starting my speech in 3, 2, and 1. Along with rejecting Rachel Chai, I also reject every single impact they've brought in this debate. Their entire case ignores the mechanism of human behavior, the complexities that lead to whether people will be toxic or not. They strawman our entire case and say that we said people will be toxic anyway, while ignoring that that's what they said and not what we said. 4 issues in this speech. Sorry, 3. Firstly, who has better relationships? Secondly, on toxic people. Thirdly, on socially anxious people. Firstly, on better relationships. I think we've taken most of their case down by explaining to you the mechanisms behind why relationships with AI are just not going to be fulfilling. Firstly was the mechanism on cognitive dissonance, which was never engaged. But then they tell you, AI will get better, or because it's appealing to your needs, and that's why it will be fulfilling. You still know, as long as the AI is sold to you as an AI and not a human, you will know that it's not someone that is real. The same way that if you cheat in an exam, you don't feel better if you get a good mark because you know that it was real. Even if you think that the person is extremely real because he speaks and talks like a human, the fact that there's something in the back of your mind that knows that the thing that you're experiencing is not real is already going to diminish your happiness. Firstly, but secondly, I tell you that we derive meaning from relationships when we don't know how the other person can treat us. I get meaning from knowing that someone could choose to not be nice to me, but chooses to be. That is where I get meaning, and I do not get meaning from people who have been programmed to be nice to me from the very first place. But second issue under this, will people want to return to AI relationships? Firstly, they've never taken down a mechanism on how AI relationships are not fulfilling the same way explicit material isn't fulfilling, and that is why people will still search for human relationships at the end. But secondly, you cannot just get fulfillment from just romantic relationships. So they have to take a stance which they have not done. Firstly, if you say AI relationships are so good, then why do you not endorse everyone just turning to AI friendships and AI relationships? The fact is, people are still going to have real human relationships, real human friendships, and that is where the harms bleed in. Which leads me to my second point, whether people will be toxic or not. God says no, because they're not going to opt into human relationships after they've opted into AI relationships. Even if you buy this, it is a small spectrum of people at the end of the day. But secondly, we say that it bleeds because firstly, the relationship with the AI is not going to be fulfilling at the end of the day, which is why they're going to switch anyway. But secondly, we say it bleeds because people are reinforced in their behavior and there is a permission mechanism behind this. When you continue to behave a certain way and no one says that you are wrong, you continue to believe that it's something that you ought to do and it's something that you're allowed to do. They strawman our case and don't deal with our impact of toxic behavior being able to be unlearned. And that leads me to their second assertion, right? On how toxic people cannot change who they are, right? Firstly, if it's really true, then we shouldn't give them a platform for them to believe that their toxic behavior is something that should not be unlearned. But secondly, toxic people can change when the mechanisms I said in my speech. Firstly, don't incentivize their initial behavior by telling them you're the best boyfriend in the world. Secondly, inform them and call them out. Thirdly, inform them they are being toxic because some people don't know. All of these impacts do not materialize when you're dating an AI chatbot. But lastly, on socially anxious people, this is their main stakeholder here. I've already told you in my speech just now that socially anxious people or people with disabilities who are rejected can cope better when they recognize that it is a problem. They have fulfillment from other relationships in status quo, from friendships. They provide them more fulfilling, because now it's not I'm an outcast and the only people that like me are AI chatbots. It's I have friends who do not care if I have disabilities, who are humans that could choose to be much cooler people, but they choose to be with me anyway. That is the kind of empowerment they can never search for on proposition. On the flip side, what have we brought to you today? We tell you that we do not continue to endorse toxic behavior of people running away from their problems, of people reinforcing their own behavior. We brought you a mechanism on how people only believe what they want to believe, how they are pushed into reinforcing their own toxic behavior the minute that there is nothing to unlearn them of it. And with that, I'm so proud to oppose.
Speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I'd like to thank the opposition reply speech for her speech, and now would like to invite the government reply speech to close the debate with her speech.
That's okay. I think at this point in the debate, if opposition cannot even put in the work to analyze the glaring flaws in their case, if they cannot even put in the work to actually prove why the delta is ultimately even the slightest bit better on their side of the house, then they shouldn't expect people who are going to end up incels to be able to properly analyze their behavior, go through their own, in their mind, cognitive behavior therapy, and actually learn how to be a better person organically in and of itself. I think this is a benefit they cannot claim, and insofar as they can't do one, they can't do that, and secondly, they can't prove why these relationships aren't inherently fulfilling insofar as humans themselves can establish emotional connections regardless of the reality of the situation, then they can't win this debate. Two things I'm going to be doing in my speech then. I'm going to be pointing out some glaring issues on opposition side of the case, some things that they have failed to prove to you in this debate, the responses that they have failed to tackle, the things that they actually promised to you but never end up engaging on. I'm going to be showing all of you those issues and proving to you why specifically that is why they lose. But secondly, I'm going to be giving you a summary of the proposition case and proving to you why, even at the end of the day, that we have proven what we have set out to do, that we have established our impacts and stuff to you at the end of the day, and that is why we win this debate. But firstly, note the incredible lack of solvency on opposition, because first of all, throughout the main substantive part of this speech, we don't really understand to any meaningful degree how you deal with incels on your side of the house, how you deal with toxic people on your side of the house. I think the majority of the engagement that comes out on this only comes out in whip, and I feel like it's not that meaningful in this debate, because essentially your whole case is status quo, and insofar as incel culture still exists on your side of the house, insofar as people refuse to take accountability anyway because they're so entrenched in their own beliefs and echo chambers and discussions, I don't think there's any meaningful change on your side. Secondly, we don't really get a meaningful picture painting on their side of the house. We're expected to believe that people will suddenly understand that they need to change and grow on their side of the house when they're ghosted by a girl on Instagram. The problem is that incels still exist on your side of the house because this kind of rejection that they face is not always a sit-down, talk-to-you session coherently and competently. It's usually just people rejecting you by saying that you're lame, that you're uncool, or that you're mean, and you take that personally, you feel rejected, and you are polarized against the entire demographic of women simply because they don't want to date you. If they're competent enough to understand their own toxicity on opposition, then you must concede to some extent that they're emotionally mature enough to either not be toxic to their girlfriends or their robot girlfriends, or to understand that the robot girlfriends are being toxic to them. Understand at the end of this debate panel that toxic people and incels are symmetrical. The delta is proven to you in our speech, in our DPM and our whip speech, right? When we tell you that at least we give these people an opportunity to release the behavior that they have been suppressed, insofar as opposition only allows these people to not actually understand what they did wrong. They only understand on the surface level that what they did is wrong, but they don't actually understand the intricacies of it. They don't understand why this behavior is toxic. And as long as they don't really believe it, they're still suppressing these behaviors and these lines of thoughts deep down. And we give them an outlet. We change the root cause. We address the root cause of this, and we actually tackle the issue. And secondly, we at least give an outlet for this kind of behavior. But secondly, on not properly tackling things, because your only response on how people don't feel fulfillment is because these things aren't real and you can't trust your robot girlfriends. Two responses to this. Firstly, people are just delusional enough to want to believe that things are real, especially if they're out of other options like BM and all that agreed on. But secondly, we understand that there's still some level of satisfaction here, right? Because if I fantasize about dating Joel He, there's still a certain level of satisfaction that I can gain from being able to
to engage in this fantasy even if I know I wake up in real life and I come and have the debate against her. But secondly, they focus on a really problematic minority of people, right? Which is toxic people. And these people will be toxic anyway because they have no incentive to be better on your side of the house insofar as you acknowledge the problems that led to incel culture in the first place. Also note the contradictions instead of the argumentation. I don't feel there's much more need to address this since I already tackled it in my DBM speech. They don't actually give you the dopamine rush thing about how they promise you, how they talk about how AI chatbots are supposed to give you a short high. They don't really tackle that. Do know that panel. And lastly, the proposition case has always been simple to you. We allow people to feel love. We allow people of all demographics to feel love, whether you're ugly, whether you're fat, whether you're short, or whether you're tall. We think that everyone gets to access love on our side of the debate. Love is love. Here.
Speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 13 seconds. I'd like to thank the government reply speech for her speech, and now would like to invite the debaters to nod or bow respectfully or cross flows. Over to you, Angelica.
Debaters, please take your seats among the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, the adjudicators will now withdraw for the deliberations. Now to everyone in the hall, please remain. Only the adjudicators will leave the hall. Debaters, please stay put as we will shortly begin with our award ceremony. Debaters, please stay put in the hall.